Welcome to the Charity Matters podcast. Mr. Rogers' mother said, always look for the helpers. I'm Heidi Johnson, nonprofit founder, lifelong helper, and your host. I've been interviewing the helpers for a decade with my blog, and I'm excited to finally be sharing these inspiring conversations with our new podcast. Join me as we learn the challenges and stories of innovators, entrepreneurs, and modern-day heroes who set out to solve the problems of humanity. Today, our guest is Brian Mavis. He and his wife, Julie, are the founders of America's Kids Belong, a nonprofit organization that works to end the crisis for kids in foster care state by state. I'm so excited to share his amazing journey and our inspiring conversation. Thank you, Brian, so much for joining us. I'm so excited to learn more about you and your journey, especially with where America's Kids Belong, and hear about the story. You know, we always hear about foster care, but I feel like foster care is something that we hear about, but we just no one really understands it or knows really the backstory. So first of all, give me a little overview of what's going on, kind of how many kids are in foster care in the United States, and then about specifically what you guys are doing.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, Heidi. I'm excited to be here. So nationally, there's over 400,000 kids in foster care today. And a way to think about that group of over 400,000 is to then put them into two different groups. There's a group of those kids, about 3/4 of them, who are on a path towards reunification with their family, and their parents and, some sort of guardian kin are working on trying to be a safe family again. And then 1/4 of those kids, so just roughly over 100,000 right now, they're on a different path. They're on a path towards needing to find a new forever family. They're essentially legally, this is not politically correct language, but kind of legally an orphan. And so we work with both sets of kids because both groups, there is a deficit of families, a big one, between families who are willing to what we call like for now families, that will say, we're here for you for now to take care of you until your biological family can. And then forever families, the ones that will say, will be your new, forever family. So we work with both sets.
So how did you you don't just wake up and no. start a nonprofit. So give me some of the backstory of what led you to this journey of foster care.
Man, that's the truth. You do not. I was thinking about this. Maybe in prep for this, it was like, this is not what I had in mind for my life, but it's definitely.
Most of us don't, by the way. No. It's a common thread.
Yeah, I like your story of it's usually born out of grief or anger or something like that.
Loss.
Something's wrong that needs to be fixed. And so really, I need to give credit where credit is due. This story starts in my wife's heart and began early for her. As a teenager, she was living in Southern California, had gone on a high school missions trip with her church into Mexico, and they worked on an orphanage. And while she was there, she said she heard, which was an inaudible, but she said clear impression, God tell her this 3-word sentence, care for orphans. And so she knew as a teenager.
Gave me chills.
She knew as a teenager her calling on her life.
Wow.
And then as a young single woman, did work on several orphanages. And then we met and got married, and I ruined her life. So it changed her plan. And
I doubt that,
but and actually, our second year of marriage, we did live in Honduras, and she worked at another orphanage there. But eventually, moving back to the States and having our own kids, a couple wonderful daughters, and kind of living a very typical, American life, and everything was good. but she was really struggling and feeling lost and felt like she could not live out her life's purpose in the United States, and eventually asked a key question to me and to herself. She said, "Are there orphans in the United States?" And
Wow.
I was like, I don't think so. I mean, we would have heard that, right?
Well, right. So, my point about foster care, I don't think it's something that's present in all of our minds, right?
Well, if you change what you want to change what somebody thinks about a thing, change what you call it. And so we stopped calling, So, there used to be orphanages, and there was the orphan train, back in the 1800s.
Absolutely. I think my grandmother might have been on that, but
yeah,
that's another story.
There are a lot of people listening probably had a great or
absolutely
great grandma on it. So, America moved to this family-based care and called it foster care. And so soon after her asking that question, it set us on exploring, and we quickly found the world of foster care. And we thought, well, this seems like a plan B. And so she asked.
What year was this?
So this was good question. 2005. So almost 16 years ago.
Okay.
And at that time too, we were living in Southern California, San Diego County. And so at first we had all the courage to take the step towards her just helping out, volunteering at a thrift store that helped with foster families. And then it didn't take long where she was like, I want to be a foster mom. And so I said, okay. So
and did you have children at this point already?
Yeah, two girls who were in elementary school. And then, so we go to the orientation. So to be a foster parent, you have to go through a series of classes, typically, and it's different in every state, but typically like 24 hours of training. And,
wow, that's it.
And so you're learning about trauma and all that kind of thing, and they're doing background checks on you. But one of the first things they let you know is who are these kids? Why are they in foster care?
Right.
And so they right off the bat say there can be a myth that these kids are in foster care because of what they've done. And that's a myth. A myth is that they did something. That what actually has happened is something has been done to them.
Done to them, correct.
And so it's either abandonment, abuse, or neglect, and neglect to a severe degree where to remove a child from a family, like that's a last step measure. That's something that nobody wants to do. And
it's bad.
You get to that point where like it's bad, but you don't know if this child will survive it. So anyway. They're talking about this and they're saying, that, these kids' parents usually are struggling with some sort of extreme addiction, or there might be, one of the parents might be in jail. There's even prostitution involved, but there's definitely abuse and neglect. So we're sitting there and Julie is getting this light bulb going over her head of like, oh my gosh, she's like, I was in Mexico as a young single woman working on an orphanage, and finally at one time had asked the executive director there, how did all these kids' parents die? And the director said, they're not dead. These kids are here because their parents are extreme addicts. Right. There might be prostitution. That there's been neglect, extreme neglect, abuse, abandonment. She's like, these are the same
much pain.
Kids. This isn't plan B. This is plan A still. Right. And it's just.
And when this light bulb was over her head, what's over yours?
I was like, oh no. And so my wife has a little bit of Lucille Ball in her. And so I was like, oh, you got some splaining to do, Julie. And so, but I will say that in this space, it is definitely, predominantly a woman-led movement. And,
interesting.
And my encouragement to the men is listen to your wives. They're out ahead of you on this. And so,
and women we're nurturers and we're empathetic, and that's just our innate role. And to be a mother and to mother others is just what we're called to do.
And I think men, so me, I'll speak for myself. I was like, I don't know if I could really love somebody else's kid.
Right.
And, this blood thing. Well, first of all, can you love somebody who's not blood? Well, and if you're married, you already do.
Right.
And so it's easy to do with a kid as well. And so,
it's 2005, you're getting your training for foster child. Mm-hmm. And then what happens?
Well, we become foster parents. We fall in love with the first one, Keegan, and then he ends up going to his grandparents, and it was a heartbreaking moment. And then we started learning that you can love and lose the child if it's for the right reason,
right? And
your heart will heal. And it's better for the adults to put on that pain than for that child to continue to experience loss. Our daughters had to go through it as well, and they're the ones who kept saying, "Let's do it again. Let's do it again." We moved to Colorado, and a couple things happened. So we're fostering still. And so my side of the story, and it's two different events, but the one that happened specifically to me, I'm a pastor at a church in Colorado, and I have this is 2007, a child welfare worker called me and asked, "Can I meet with you to talk about child welfare in our county?" I said, "Sure." So a few days later, this woman named Cindy came. We met in the lobby. The first thing she said to me is, "Thank you for meeting with me. I've been trying to meet with a pastor for 3 years. You're the first one to say yes." So
what?
Yeah. So I apologize that was her experience. And just so you know, so it doesn't sound like I'm patting myself on the back. If she had called 2 years earlier, I might have said no too, because I would have thought, what's this have to do with the church?
Right.
And
is in that role in the church, you were taking care of so many.
There's so many things. People come every week with another good, worthy thing. And so.
Right. Sometimes, I can see that could be like the final being like, okay, how much more can I handle?
Yeah,
right.
So anyway, she, thanks to my wife, we are foster parents. So I say yes to her, and she goes back. We visit a little bit in my office, and she said, "Brian, I really just came here to tell you one thing." She said, in the 27-year history of child welfare in our county, there has never been one single day, not one day, where kids weren't waiting for grown-ups to take care of them. And she said, "I have a challenge for you."
Wow.
And so this was the 3-word sentence that changed my life. My wife's was care for orphans. Mine was this one. She goes, "I have a challenge for you. Change who waits. Help me change who waits."
Wow.
Help me recruit so many families who will step up.
Wow.
That they're on the waiting list, not the kids.
Wow.
So
and I'm just fascinated with what made this woman know to go to a pastor. I think that's interesting too. I mean, I know God works in mysterious ways, but I think that's so fascinating.
So interesting, her story. So before she challenges me with that, she does share a little bit about her background. She said, "I'm Cindy," and she said, before working here, I worked for 20 years in Chicago in the Cabrini Green housing projects, and then I met a priest. We fell in love and became Episcopalian. So awesome. Okay. That will change your theology.
Right. But all the threads that lead to these paths of service are so fascinating to me.
Yeah.
And how they all intersect, right? I mean, it's just, and I guess that explains how she knocked on your door. I mean, she knew somehow that there was an alignment somewhere. And then
there was. And so, so I have this former nun, challenging me to help kids who need families. And I thought, well, if I say no, I'm going to go to hell. So,
oh, yeah, you will. I have an aunt that is a nun. So
I'll be honest. Those moments in your life when you feel like somebody has said something to you that came from beyond them. And it was one of those moments. I was like, oh, I'm supposed to say yes to this. And so we did say yes. A year later, we fulfilled that goal. So what hadn't happened in 27 years happened in 1.
Right.
And it was just getting the churches involved. And two things. One was this conviction that the church, it wasn't the church didn't care, they were unaware. And the second thing is that these kids were unseen and unknown.
Absolutely.
And so if we could give them a chance to speak for themselves, to have a face and a voice, that would move people's hearts. And it did. And so that happened. So then we keep growing. The state keeps asking for our help.
But let's go back a little bit because, there's that moment where you're called. And I can tell you, of the hundreds of people I've interviewed, every single person knows the moment. Mm-hmm. Every single one. So you're not alone. I mean, and I was raised by nuns in Catholic school, and always told there's going to be some calling, like, oh, they're going to call you. And as a child, I was terrified, like, oh, please don't call me, God. Like, I don't want to pick up the phone. That's so scary. Like, I was terrified of this thing. And what's so fascinating is that now I talk to people all the time. I know I was called in my role of creating a nonprofit. And when I talk to my tribe, to all of you amazing humans who do this work to serve others, all of you know this moment you've been called, and your wife obviously was called early. Mm-hmm. And some people call it God, some people call it something else, whatever it is, to your point, that it is bigger than you and that you have to do it. And all of a sudden your life is taking a major turn that you didn't see coming. It was no one that I've ever talked to has had a plan to do this work. No one. It's hard. It's really hard. Mm-hmm. So at what point did you say this needs to become a 501c3?
Yeah. So over the next few years, it was, Brian and Julie, running around all of Colorado. We, had gotten the permission to video the kids, especially the older ones. And that was a game changer. And again, so our innovation wasn't technology. It was trust, getting child welfare to trust us, right, with their kids. And then my connections with the churches and stuff. But we ran out of money, and then we kept being asked to do more. And so it outgrew us. I grew our capacity. Right. And so, and in order to do some of the things they were asking us to do, we had to be an organization. So right. That's when we said, okay, I guess we're going to be a nonprofit.
And don't you, the reality is it doesn't matter if, talking to someone who's serving the homeless or someone who's serving sick children or someone who's serving foster care, the need is always greater than we can meet. Mm-hmm. And yet we're hardwired to really think we we just want to keep raising more money to help more people, to serve more kids. It's just like an innate thing that comes with the desire to do this work, that you're not going to leave anyone left behind, that you're going to try to, and I think it's one of the hardest parts about this work, because we can't always save everybody. And I think that's, one of the heartbreaking things, because we work so hard, and it's a business. It's a business. Saving kids, it's still a business. You still have to do all the things a business has to do. So what year did you get your 501c3?
2010, 9 or 10, I think.
So you were kind of doing this work for a little while, a few years without it. And then did it change once you became a nonprofit? Did things become easier, harder?
Well, it was all brand new to us. Again, we had never done this before. So I guess we need a board, and then I guess they have there's board, officers, and what do they do? And I guess we got to start fundraising. Had never done that before. Yeah. And so it was easier, because we had more help, and it was harder because, every day we were waking up doing something we had never done before. It felt like. It's like, that's another. Yeah.
So what do you think your biggest challenges have been along the way in creating this organization?
So everybody has their own gift in this, and some things are easy for people, and those things that are easy for me are hard for others, and things that are hard for me are easy for others. So, fortunately, my wife and I, this is crazy. I mean, after, we'll be married 30 years this summer.
Oh, same with me. 30 years this summer, 1991.
All right. Congrats.
Me too.
Up to this point, we thought that we were extremely similar, had like a very similar gift set. It's through this that we learned that we actually were very, we learned a lot about each other, after already being married over 20 years. We started learning like, oh, you're really good at that, and I'm not. And I didn't know that about you. She's really good at operations and sequence, and I'm not. So there's those kinds of things, learning about that. But you
complemented each other, obviously.
Yeah, we complemented. So, so that was fortunate, but then we started recognizing right away of like, oh, but now we like, you just keep seeing gaps. Like we need somebody who's really good at this thing.
Right.
And, or something that I'd be like, I'm competent at this, but I need to quit focusing on it because I need to put my strength over here. So it was because of how much we've grown. To answer your question, the growing is the hard part because each stage requires a new kind of leadership. And so you go from being the doer to then being the manager, and then you're the manager of doers, and then you're the leader of doers, and then the leader of managers, and eventually need to be the leader of leaders. And so each of those is a new stage and in a new growing pains.
Absolutely. I love the way you define that, by the way. I'm in the middle of one of those phases.
Sorry.
I'm just looking at where I'm going. You just laid out my path, and I'm just thinking, oh, wow, Brian, that's going to be really, really interesting. Well, I mean, speaking of managing, running a business is hard. Running a business that raises money is harder, I think.
I called running a nonprofit two businesses. There's the business of the mission, and there's the business of the funding.
The funding, and no one wants to pay to keep lights on. People want to pay for a child. Mm-hmm. The lights have to stay on, and things have to happen, and it's one of the most frustrating things. But there are days, and because I think people who are leaders and social impact entrepreneurs, whatever you want to call them, nonprofit founders, we wear so many hats. We're pulled in so many directions. Like any CEO would be pulled in a direction as far as doing marketing and doing funding and looking at budgets and dealing with boards. I mean, we do all the same things. But at the end of the day, the bucket is heavy and it stops with us. Mm-hmm. And there are days when you just think, how am I going to get this all done? How am I going to move forward? And when that happens, when the bucket's heavy those days, and there isn't always, you do have your wife, but it's still kind of your bucket. What fuels you to keep going?
It's conviction and commitment, and this sense of like there's an injustice that needs to get set right, and then you got to look for the victories. It's
absolutely.
You can look at like the numbers of like, oh, we increased this by 40% and all that, but that doesn't move your heart as much as like Adrian found a family, and he'd been in raised in institutions for the past 7 years, and now he's got a mom and a dad. It's that kind of thing that says, okay, I'm going to fight another day.
And that is a perfect segue to my next question, because I think one of my love-hate relationship with this word is impact. I really struggle with it. I think it's great that donors and organizations hold us responsible for what we're able to do and how many we serve and the percentage of that and all of their socioeconomic background and all these numbers and statistics that we're held accountable for a variety of reasons. I think it's great because it's a business and we need to do that. Mm-hmm. But I think when you're measuring impact and you're measuring, how do you measure that Adrian has a home when you're filling out a form, how do you measure that you've changed a child's life forever or given a child love and a forever place to live? I mean, that's immeasurable. So when you're thinking about your impact, whether you had a billboard or a video and you could tell, a story about that impact, what would it be? Would it be a story of Adrian? Would it be how many children you're serving? What do you like to share?
Yeah.
There's no wrong answer.
Yeah. So I'm a bit of a storyteller, but I know there are people, there's people who like statistics and people like stories, people like numbers and people like narratives, people like facts, people like faces. Right. And so you have to be sensitive, knowing if you're speaking to an audience, you have to give both. If you're speaking to a person individually, you kind of have to figure out, you read your room, like which way this goes. Right. But I will say, even those numbers people, I can make them cry. And that's the thing you do. You don't make them cry with the numbers. You tell the story of a kid. And
so give us one of those. And I'm not saying make me cry because I cry really easily.
No, but and it's really it's the kids. Like because we put a kid in front of a camera and we say, tell us what you want, and some of the things that comes out of their mouths. So part of this is we're photographing these kids and then writing their stories. And my wife comes home after one of these events. And she says, if people could just see what I see and hear what I hear from these kids, it would change everything. And so that's where we said, let's give them that chance. And where kids are just like wanting to be with their siblings again and all that. So it's the kids who really make them cry. And so,
and what are those? I mean, as far as impact, what's the story that you would share that has been, you've moved the needle, and no CEO, no nonprofit founder, no individual ever says, well, I did this, because we all know it's this huge village of people that make this happen. But there are those moments of grace where you say, I can't believe I am privileged to witness this or be a part of this. And what does that moment look like for you?
Yeah. Well, again, I would just for your listeners, think of it in three categories. There's the emotional case for your nonprofit, there's the intellectual case for your nonprofit, and there's the transformational case for your nonprofit. And you need all three. And so there are the times when you can say, hey, look, we moved into this state, started doing our work here, and we increased the number of the recruitment rate of foster families by 40% statewide within a year. Like that is an intellectual case. The emotional case is sharing a story. The transformational is when a kid goes into a home and a family, it changes everything for them. It changes their future, which could be one that is bleak into one that is hopeful. And so it comes, and again, for me, I think numbers can be numbing. And when you come down to saying, let me tell you the story of Adrian. He went into foster care when he was 8. He's 15 today. He's had no inquiries on his life. He feels unwanted. And we did his video, and within 3 weeks of promoting it, we had 24 families asking about him being their son. And so it's, and then you can talk about how that can change. And then you can talk about the financial side, that it costs us, a minimal amount of dollars to do that. And if he had aged out of foster care, just on the financial side, it would have cost, throughout social services, hard cost $300,000 of services as a young adult for him. So there's that side to it. But I really go for people's hearts, and again, I know that there's people who are like, I just want to know, like, if I give you $1,000, is it financially, what difference does it make? So it's this, but
and
if
how
you have
can
a
you not?
Heart, you get the rest.
Right. And that's who you want to have these kids anyways, right? You want someone who has this huge heart that's going to share that love, that has an overflowing cup and has something to give, that's going to change that child's life. I mean, you think about that little boy and, and where he is now and being loved up, and that changes the trajectory of everything. I mean, it's all, I've spent a lot of time in Watts in South Central Los Angeles with a nonprofit I was chaired the board and really involved with, called Bourbon Day, and our boys all live in poverty and 100% go to a 4-year college. But we had supportive families and we had mentoring. Even though they grew up in extreme poverty, they had love and they had support, and that was what got them through. And yes, they had incredible financial, obstacles, but without love and support, you can't move forward. It's the fuel that makes everything go.
Yeah, it is.
It's just the fuel, and to be providing that fuel. And also I think, we have a privileged position to witness the best in humanity, and when you put a child out there and 24 people want that child, it must just renew your faith that people are good.
It does. And there are some remarkable people. I mean, no doubt about it, who, I shake my head at them sometimes of like what they're willing to endure in order to help someone who's in a harder place. And there's some remarkably wicked people too. I mean, I see both sides. And it's sometimes the contrast is pretty stark.
Yeah. I know that it exists, and I know, especially when dealing with children, it's always, we have to be so careful with everything that we do, 100%. And I say that I run a youth leadership organization, and I take that responsibility really seriously. So I completely understand what you're saying. So if you could dream any dream, what for your organization, you can wave a magic wand, what would it be? What would it be?
Yeah. So for us, we're not trying to be the organization that does it all. We're wanting to be an organization that is catalytic, inspiring others to step up. And so, one way to put it is, I try to get if we go into an area, we try to get all the geese to fly in formation. Well, first of all, you need to realize that a lot of the geese are just walking around crapping. And so,
okay.
People think they're it's like,
makes sense.
Of all. So you got to get them directed and then elevated. And so there's one thing we do is the groups that are already involved, we try to elevate the active, but the other group we're wanting is to activate the inactive. And so a lot of businesses, I think, are looking for a way to make an impact beyond the bottom line. And so at least there is a second bottom line.
Right.
And so a dream for me would just be to see a lot of businesses want to support foster families who've invited a lot of woundedness into their hearts and homes to help these kids, to support foster families in a way that they might support military families. And so they don't have to change their vocation to be part of the solution. If you run a martial arts studio, provide free martial arts to these foster children. If you have a pizza place, 50% off on Tuesdays, whatever it is that you do. And then the faith community is the other place, is for these, women like Cindy. When she makes a phone call, she doesn't have to wait for 3 years to get a yes.
Wow.
That these faith communities would say that, well, let me put it this way. I think it would be their reflex to say, yeah, we could see how these kids would, need us.
Right.
I want the faith communities to think of it this way. We need these kids. We need them to be the kind of church or community that we're called to be. And so,
Right.
and to take it in a serious way, and when things get hard, they get better. That they learn about trauma care, and they really surround these families and support them. So I would love to see churches do the hard thing, the hard work, and not just do this kind of transactional kind of ministry in the town of like, hey, we delivered coats one day a year. Or,
Right.
We
did a can drive.
We did a can drive and got rid of all the peas I hate in my pantry. It's like, well, how about how about having something that's more relational, transformational, and actually interacting with people? So it would be that.
I think that that's a beautiful dream. I think that that's a fantastic dream. And I think that that's a realistic dream. I think that people, everyone has a gift and everyone has something to share. And it's just trying to find the way to align the two. Like you said, like whether it's a pizza parlor or martial arts or whatever it is, there's something that you have to give. And I think people sometimes get like, oh, they're coming at me. They're coming at my checkbook. They're coming for me. And they get it. The defenses go up and they get a little nervous rather than thinking, oh, yeah, I have extra pizza. I mean, people just, they're not wired to think that way. And that feels so easy. I could happily do pizza for, family gathering. I mean, it's just things that people they just don't think that way. And I think our, part of these conversations is hoping that we inspire the people to start thinking differently, right? To just be open to, well, what can I do? I can do some small thing.
Yes.
I can do some small thing, which I think is great. So obviously, since the light bulb went off in 2010, life has changed a little bit for you. And obviously, the pastor, you're obviously probably wise and more in tune maybe with yourself and lessons you're learning. But I do think sometimes in our space, running these organizations, we're so busy trying to achieve the next goal and take care of the next person we're serving and meet the next, roadblock, that we don't always stop and think about how we have been impacted and the things we've learned by witnessing, humanity, by witnessing the best and worst of people and the things that we see in our work. So what lessons do you think you've learned since you've gone through this journey?
Yeah, there's a lot. And so the hard thing is to figure out what to say at this moment.
This is always the tough question. This is the one that but it is hard because we don't stop and think about each challenge presents a new lesson, and we don't always stop and recognize what we learned from whatever that was.
Yeah, I would say all along the way, because of if you've been called to it, like you've described, so many people said, I didn't see this coming and here I am, is there's always the very real temptation is not quite the right word, but to burn out, to say that, well, because what you do is so important, there's never a time to quit. Or never time to rest. That's even more important. And if you don't rest, sickness will become your rest.
Right.
And so this is something, again, I'm not an expert in. I'm trying to learn is of like if your organization has a set of values, whether it's written down or not, I would always say all these values are need to have one umbrella over it, and that umbrella is health, emotional health, relational health, spiritual health, physical health. If you aren't healthy, you're leading then from an unhealthy place. It'll eventually it'll catch up to you. So take that seriously. Of today, tomorrow, what's one thing you could do to put yourself in a healthier place, and to think of your life and maybe as a set of rooms, and say, look at your financial room, look at your relational room and your social room and your physical room, and like which one's the biggest mess and what can you do different? Can you drink more water tomorrow? I mean, can you take a 10-minute nap? Can you when was the last time you read something that wasn't about what you do?
Right.
That.
And I think that's beautiful because, I mean, there's a reason they tell you to put the mask on yourself and then your child. There's a reason.
Great metaphor. Mm-hmm.
There's a reason that they say that. But somehow when you have a job or a passion for service or serving people, it's not like we're running, a pencil company and we have to sell and make so many pencils every day. We have humanity on our backs, and we think about those faces of the people that we're serving and think, oh, I can't take a nap now, or I can't, it would be so selfish of me to do that when I should be taking care of, Johnny, Joey, whoever. And the reality is you can't take care of them, like you said, if you're not your best self. You just can't.
You're running out of oxygen. Right.
And I think burnout is a really, really real thing, exactly to your point, in this space. And I think it's something that, for whatever reason, we feel guilty for stopping and resting. And it's the last thing we should feel. You've got to fill up your tank, to keep going. You got to keep that tank filled. And amen to that, because I got to say, I'm a big proponent of self-care personally. So I love that message. So how do you think you have changed as a person?
I've learned a lot more, and I have a long ways to go still, about the effects of trauma on people, especially kids. And in this case, there's different kinds of trauma. There's acute trauma, something that happens once. There's chronic trauma, something that's happened over a period of time. And then there's complex developmental trauma, which is something that happened. And the reason it's complex and developmental is those first two didn't happen by the hands of somebody who was meant to love you and care for you. And so that kind of trauma is profound. And on the other hand, when there's enough skilled people who understand that and understand how to give hope and healing and love, a lot of that trauma can be healed. And so I came almost back to your question before of, if I had a magic wand, I wish churches would become trauma competent, informed, that it would help everyone to understand, how to.
And the people that are hurting hurt.
And and they hurt others, and the people who need the most love usually ask for it in the most unloving kinds of ways. And so it's quick if you don't have the eyes for it, that what you see in people is bad behavior instead of sad behavior or mad behavior. They're upset, and so you just you write them off instead of saying, we know how to help. And so I'm learning about that, and it's making me a better human, and not just being more empathetic, but being skilled on how to be a healing kind of person.
Wow. If we could all take a page from that, imagine what the world would be like. If we could all just stop when we see something like that and ask why instead of judge, and think of how different the world would be. I mean, I think it's so insightful. And I have to say, my nun aunt is the one who told me years ago, Heidi, people that are hurting hurt.
Yes.
And you need to not be wounded by that, but you need to ask, why are they hurting? And I think that's.
She knew decades ago. Yeah.
Oh, she did. She did. God rest her. I mean, she's still here. She's 84 and she's still going strong, and she's been serving people all over this globe her entire life, has lived a life of service, and is really one of my role models. But I think that as we learn more about trauma and different types of hurt, we can become better people and better neighbors and better foster care parents potentially and better humans in general, because I think we all have to stop when the wound is afflicted and ask, where is that coming from? Where is that coming from?
Yes. Yeah.
And rather than just react is really saying, where is that coming from? I think that's a really beautiful lesson for all of us. And I'm so grateful for you for sharing it with us. So I want to know how we can support America's Kids Belong, how we can help you. What can we do? Where can we get more information?
Sure.
All of it.
Yeah. So, you can visit our website in americaskidsbelong.org, or the abbreviated version is just amkidsbelong.org. But right now we're actually have just started a campaign, and it's part of a bigger campaign, a meta campaign, along with a organization called Orphan Myth, and you can go to their site, orphanmyth.org. And it is an awareness and also a financial thing, but it's unlike anything I've ever seen or heard before. It's the specific campaign is just lasting a couple of weeks, and it's called the 100% Participation Campaign. And so it's kind of a peer-to-peer network kind of thing, and the idea is that you can identify a group of people. So that might be your small group from church, or it might be the group of people in your entire company, or a department in your company, or a group of neighbors in your cul-de-sac. And you can say, let's try to get all of us 100% to participate in giving. And we have no idea how much you gave. We only know that you did or didn't. And so there's this tech platform that just says you can set up your group. You can see, and the person can give $1, a person can give $1,000. You just don't know. And
it's on your website. You get it through your website.
This is on orphanmyth.org.
Okay, orphanmyth.
And you can select America's Kids Belong as being the recipient. And so this is part of a meta campaign. There's a lot of organizations, about 20 or so, that could be beneficiaries of this. And so I would say, if you like what we're doing, then you want to consider supporting us. And again, it's kind of an easy ask, because you're asking people just to participate, and the amount is not what we're going after. We're going after everybody doing something. And that's, again, I think what I love about that is there's always this idea that if you can't do the big thing, if you can't do everything, then you're not going to do anything.
Right.
And so it's like, just start, do something, take the next baby step. And so what I like about this is it doesn't put a requirement out there as to the amount. It's just saying, do something.
And there's nothing better, especially right now, as you've said a couple things, one about health and about taking care of yourself. And here in a time of COVID, where people, I think, are realizing the importance of their health. And then the point of connection, because in COVID, we're all isolated. So what a beautiful gift you're giving people to not only form community and to reach out to maybe that coworker they haven't seen in the office, but they used to stand at the water cooler and have coffee with every day and say, hey, Joe, I'm doing this thing, and we're all coming together, and we're getting Jane, and we're getting Fred, and we're getting Susie, and we're going to do this thing. Come get together. And to bring a point of connection for something good and to help save a child's life. I mean, to me, that's like, you're winning across the board there. You're checking a lot of boxes with that, Brian, and I think that's pretty.
Oh, you get it.
Pretty fantastic. It's pretty fantastic. I think it's awesome. Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you so much for sharing about what's happening with these children in foster care, and just opening our eyes to simple ways that we can make a difference. And thank you for answering the calling when, I know your wife's light bulb went off, but thank you for answering yours, because what a gift you are giving the world, and how many lives you are impacting and changing is just remarkable.
Thank you, Heidi. It's an honor to be with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Charity Matters podcast. I really enjoyed talking to Brian Mavis today about what it takes to start a business that changes children's lives. I think his comment about self-care and really looking at our health, emotional, physical, social, and spiritual, as rooms in our house and asking ourselves which one we are going to clean was really inspirational and true. To learn more about these incredible modern-day heroes and entrepreneurs, or if you'd just like to reach out to us, visit us at charity-matters.com or connect with us on Instagram at Charity Matters. If you enjoyed our conversation, we would love it if you shared this with your friends and family. And remember that together we can make a difference, one small act of kindness at a time. See you next week.